Howdy. Today on Flipping Science we're going to be looking at naming aldehydes, ketones, carboxylic acids and amines. We're going to start with aldehydes and ketones. They both feature the carbonyl group, which is a C with a double bond to an O somewhere in the chain. Aldehydes, the C double bond O, the carbonyl group, it's at the end of the chain. With ketones, it's somewhere in the middle of the chain, not at the end. They're both made from the oxidation of alcohols. So aldehydes, they're made from oxidation of primary alcohols, ketones from the oxidation of secondary alcohols. We've got some examples down here. So we've got formaldehyde down here, which is official name is methanol. Here we've got ethanol, so there's 2 carbons, it's still at the end of the chain. Propanol, so there's 3 carbons, but the C double bond O group is still at the end of the chain, and so on. Down here we've got a ketone, so this is propanone. So the C double bond O group is in the middle, it's not at the end of the chain. So when we look at naming aldehydes, we put the suffix Al at the end of the parent carbon chain. You'll see the C double bond OH group, it's always at the end of the chain, and you just put Al at the end of the carbon chain. So let's have a look over here. So we've got 3 carbons, so 1, 2, 3. So methyl ethyl propyl, so it's going to be propanal. Propanal, so we just put that at the end of the chain. If we look at this one here, we count our carbons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so pentanal, this one's going to be, so pentanal. If we look at this one over here, we've got a methyl group, but in terms of naming, the most important thing is the carbonyl group at the end here. So we've got carbon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going to number from this end because that's where the big important bit is. So we've got a methyl group on carbon 2, so 2 methyl and 7, so heptanal. Alright, so to name ketones, because it's on a specific carbon in the middle of a chain, not at the end, we need to number it. So we use the number as an infix, and our suffix is -one. So here's our example here, so propan 2-one, or just propanone is the only place that the ketone group can go on. So let's start with this one here in the middle. So we'll count our carbons, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's going to be heptan 4-one. So heptan is the parent chain, so heptan. On carbon 4, we've got the ketone group, and the suffix is -one. If we have a look at this one over here, we count from this end because that'll give us our lowest number for this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's going to be octan because we've got 8. The parent carbon chain, octan 3-one. If we look at this one over here, we've got a methyl group, so that makes things a little bit more complicated. We could number from here or here, it doesn't make a difference. Again, we want to number so the ketone group over here is on the lowest number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we've got a methyl group on carbon 2. So 2 methyl, heptan 3. It's on carbon 3-one. That's where our carbonyl group is. Alright. The next group we're going to look at is the carboxylic acids. The carboxylic acids have this group here, C double bond OH. That's how I read that when I see it because that reminds me of what's in there. There's a carbon that has a double bond to an oxygen atom and then a OH group that's attached to the carbon. The reason why it's an acid is because this H here, this hydrogen atom, that can break off and protonate a water molecule to make hydronium ions, and that's why it's an acid, so it loses that H. The suffix at the end is oic acid. They're always at the end of chains, so we don't need to number these. So you use your parent carbon chain, you put oic acid at the end. So here's a simple one, ethanoic acid. So there's 2 carbons in the chain, so carbon 1 here, carbon 2 here, and yes, so it's at the end of the chain, and we just put oic acid. So 2 carbons is ethan, so ethanoic acid. So let's look at our examples. So we're going to count the number of carbons. We're going to start from the end where the carboxylic acid group is. So we've got carbon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's going to be heptanoic acid. Alright. We've got some more complicated ones down here. We've got a branch coming off here, so we've got a methyl branch. So we've got carbon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So on carbon 2, we've got a methyl group. So 2 methyl, and 5 is pentanoic acid. So pentan, the suffix oic acid. This one over here, we're going to start numbering. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's our longest chain here. So on carbon 2, we've got a methyl group and an ethyl group. So the ethyl comes first in terms of naming. So it's going to be 2 ethyl, and on carbon 2 there's a methyl group as well. 2 methyl, and 5 carbons, so pentanoic acid. So our parent chain is a 5 carbon chain, so that means it's pentan, so pentanoic acid. The last group we're going to look at is amines. So amines contain a group with a nitrogen in it, usually attached to some hydrogens. This is a primary amine. That's the only ones that you need to be able to do in year 12. So there's a nitrogen usually attached to some hydrogens, and then there's a carbon that it's usually attached to. So the suffix here is amine, and if you need to indicate the location, then you use an infix to do that. So let's look at some examples. So down here, we'll start with this one down here. How many carbons are there? There's 1, so it's going to be meth. Now here's our amine group. There's no other location it can possibly be, so this is just methanamine. So methane, amine. So the parent carbon is methane with an amine group. If we look at this one now, so we'll number our carbons. So 1, 2, 3. So methyl, ethyl, propyl. So we're going to have prop at the top. So propan. Which carbon is the amine group attached to? It's on carbon 2. So propan 2, and then amine as our suffix. This one down here, now there's no carbon here, so we'll start numbering from there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's going to be hexan, and on carbon 1, amine. So this last one here, we're going to number from here. The reason for that is we've got a side chain over here. The carbon that the nitrogen is attached to is carbon 2. So we'll number in 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 carbons in our longest chain. So I'm going to go hexan. On carbon 2, that's where our amine group is. And then the last bit is I've got a methyl group on carbon 4. So 4 methyl hexan 2amine. Alright? So that's how to name several organic compounds. That's it for Flipping Science today. See ya.